just a little bit more about the talk as well before we invite Bethany up. On January 9th of 2007, the world changed. No, it wasn't a massive drop in the stock market, a terrorist attack, or the beginning of a pandemic, but rather a simple announcement from a tech company in California. That day, Steve Jobs, CEO of Apple, introduced the iPhone, and our lives haven't been the same since. In 2022, the average American spends over 5 hours a day on their phone, and likely, if pressed, wouldn't wish it to be that way. Can you relate? By the end of the session, participants will have tangible ways to implement healthy technology and social media habits in order to thrive both personally and professionally. They will also be equipped with how to do a reset when they feel like the healthy tech habits that they previously put in place have faded. So with that, we are going to welcome up Bethany.
We're trying to mangle our little kids up here. Hey guys, I'm Bethany. I'm gonna just hold this probably. Okay. I think they're gonna go with Daddy. So we have our little 2-year-old girl. Her name is Esther. She just turned 2 in December. And then, there you go. Yeah. And she's gonna join me. And then we have our son Benaiah, who's 6 weeks old. And so for a little bit we had 2 under 2, which was a little crazy, as you can imagine. But so, anyways, I appreciate you reading that intro because that's how I was gonna start. Because I just think it's important for us to realize that, we're not here to bash on social media or phones, all that stuff. Well, we want to talk about how do we have a life where our screens enhance our life and add value rather than taking away. So a little bit, I know you shared some of the background too. We hosted over 20 experiences previous to COVID when everything got shut down. And actually our last one that we did was in Kansas City with SPO. And so it was really cool to be able to have that opportunity to go out there and facilitate that. And I think that's sort of what planted the seed for coming out here this week. But I've learned that your relationship with your phone is what you make it. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And you can use it as a helpful tool or a time-wasting toy. You can contribute to help others or consume whatever is trending, usually negative. You can control what you listen to, making sure that it is life-giving, building you up and others up. Or it can be passive in what you consume, allowing negativity to dominate your mind. So I want to start with a quote from Catherine Price. She wrote this book, How to Break Up with Your Phone, which I think is pretty cool, and a great resource if you guys want to, dive into this more afterwards. But she says, the more I used my phone to navigate my life, the less capable I felt of navigating my life without my phone. She goes on to write, if you wanted to invent a device that could rewire our minds, create a society of people who are perpetually distracted, isolated, and overtired, if you wanted to weaken our memories and damage our capacity for focus and deep thoughts, if you wanted to reduce empathy, encourage self-absorption, and redraw the lines of social etiquette, you'd likely end up with a smartphone. So, and I think too, why this is so important, I was able to hear glimpses of some of the sessions, but what they were talking about is, and I think, I hope I quote her right, last night she was talking about what we give attention to is what we worship. And I think that's why this is so important, is because, and then she was talking about different idols and things like that. I think our phones can so easily become one of those idols. And she sort of insinuated it a little bit with social media, or, some of you might be gamers, so, it might not be like a phone thing. But I think it's so important because how we spend our time is how we spend our life. And that's why this is important, because if we're just passively consuming all this content, then we're not living our life intentionally and maybe fully surrendered to how God wants us to live, which I know Nick talked about a little bit this morning, living a surrendered life. So we're gonna, and the thing is, we won't change our relationship with our phones or technology or social media or whatever it is until we think it's important enough to do so. So I'm glad you guys are here and look forward to diving in together. And I just want you guys to know that tech addiction is not an accident. There's thousands of programmers whose sole purpose is to keep us addicted. They're literally paid to keep our attention because our attention is their commodity, our time, basically. So, don't feel discouraged. If you guys, some of you might have tried to do this on your own already and, fall back. I know we have a couple people who've been, to our experiences before. I've done it, and where you know all these bad things about social media and your phone, and then still you fall into the trap. But I wouldn't beat yourself up because that's what they're designed to do. And so I think the more that we know, it's sort of like Satan. The more that we know, like his strategies and the way that he wants to tempt us or control us, then the more that we can combat it. So don't feel discouraged, and I would just be consistent, and the changes will totally be worth it. Have you guys ever seen the movie Social Dilemma? Yeah? Okay. My husband was like, I don't know if anybody's going to be seeing it. Do you guys, just shout out some, like any of the takeaways that you had from it?
Phones are bad.
Why?
Because they consume us.
Okay, anybody else want to share? Yeah.
We're the product.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Like the designers of social media apps literally like made it so that there's certain things that like make you more addicted.
Yeah.
It's actually crazy.
Yeah.
But they like purposely.
Yeah, it's so true.
I think one of the biggest things was that people that designed these platforms,
Yeah.
like the guy that designed the infinite scroll, now says it's a bad thing. And they actually don't let their children engage with this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's so true. If you guys want to know if something is good or bad, see if people allow their kids to do it. Because if they don't, then you know it's a bad thing. And like a lot of the tech giants out there, even like the guys who helped create iPhones and iPads, and their kids don't have them because they know how addictive it is. And I think it's so true, like you were talking about back there, about how it, and we're going to hit on all of this, but even like the notifications, these things that are literally programmed to keep us addicted, and then like we are the product. That's our time, like our attention is the product, and so that's why we get all the ads and stuff like that, because we're being sold constantly. I forget what the number is. I think it's over, like we see over 200,000 ads a day. And it's just like this constant consumerism in our culture, which I think a lot of times pulls us away from contentment. And I think it was Nick who talked about, how envy was the first sin in the garden. And I mean, that's a lot of what I think, could be programmed into our devices. So anyways, thanks guys for sharing. Did anybody else want to share from social? No? Okay. But most people, I was going to have you, I mean, we can do this. Yeah. Okay, so I want you to think about what your time on your phone is. So like have a number in your head. And then, for those of you who have iPhones, I want you to go to your settings, and then go to your screen time, and see what it actually is. For Androids, I'm sorry, I don't know how to help you, hopefully. What is it? Digital well-being. For Androids? Okay. So if you have it for Androids, digital well-being. So, and then I want you to tell your neighbor what you thought it was, and then maybe what it was.
That's so
Yeah, mine over breakers definitely.
Okay, wait. Messages, music, maps, and clock. I don't feel as bad.
Right. Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is good.
Oh, I feel good about myself.
It's like, oh, yeah, you too. That's pretty solid. It comes out, like, so for myself, it'll do, like, weekly reports, usually.
All right, did you guys all have a chance to do it?
I'll say, like, users on this much more than this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, is anybody willing to share their screen time?
2 hours and 20 minutes.
Oh, come on. I need somebody with more.
I can give you
No. 7? Okay. Yeah.
Last week, I was at 5 hours and 22 minutes a day.
Okay. There you go. Okay, because you're traveling. Yeah, I know sometimes it'll mess you up. Go ahead. Okay, so yeah. Okay. So you guys are just reiterating what was talked about, that the you want to share?
This is kind of scary. So I figured that because of work and like you work 8 hours a day,
Yeah.
you're home maybe 4 or 5 after that,
Yeah.
personal time, entertainment, all these kind of things. So I figured that I wouldn't have more than between the 5 and 12 limit. And I pull it up and I move it to weekly. Daily average is about 5 hours. Total came up to 20 hours and 36 minutes.
A day?
I was like,
Oh man.
that means I wake up in the middle of the night to check.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I just remember this. Sorry, I was supposed to have you guys. There's handouts in the back. And if you guys didn't have a chance to grab a handout, just raise your hand, and they're gonna help pass them out. Thankfully. So sorry. I'm glad I remembered that. A little late. But yeah, no, you guys literally just reiterated what we're talking about. That the average person spends 5 hours a day on their phone, and half of that is typically on social media. So, and I know you guys, so I want to start with some stats, because numbers don't lie, right? So, the average internet user spends 2.5 hours on social media alone, which would add up to, if you live like the average span of a lifetime, it's 6 years and 8 months of your lives on social media alone. So if you double that for your phone, that's over 13 years of your life that you're spending on your phone. Yeah. So, because the average time you're on, is 5 hours. So, and here's the crazy part. That's a fourth of our waking time that we're spending on our phones. And we check our phones about 150 times a day, and few can go longer than 10 minutes. So we'll see how you guys do during this session. But what does this imply? Okay, so first off, it means that our lives are in a way controlled by what we consume on our phones, because it's such a significant amount of time that we're spending on it. It's so important to be guarded about what we're consuming on it. So, I mean, we can share it because it's a little bit smaller of a group, but what are some of the negative effects that you guys have experienced from your phones or social media or whatever? Yeah.
I'm going to jump ahead and say leading into sin.
Okay.
Memory loss.
Okay. What was that?
Memory loss.
Yeah.
Being tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Low attention span.
Yeah.
Actually really bad. I cannot drive without looking at my phone.
That's
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Laziness.
What was that?
Laziness.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
I said anxiety.
Anxiety. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true.
Relationships.
Yeah. Relationships.
I find them directionally challenged. Like I can't get anywhere without my mouse.
That's true. I feel like that's
Comparison.
comparison. Yeah. You guys in fact?
Become less social.
Yeah.
Just wasting time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like in the habit of like consuming too much content.
Have any of you guys ever tried to do like a digital detox or, yeah? So have you guys done it on your own or have you done it like in a group? On your own with a friend? Yeah. And then what were some of sort of your takeaways from doing it? Did it like bring about lasting changes or was it sort of just a thing you did and then you were right back to where you were? Made you mad. She said it made me mad. Why did it make you mad?
Because they had all the passcodes to my
Yeah.
screen time, and every time like my TikTok would shut off, I
Yeah.
was just mad at my boyfriend.
So maybe don't give your password to your boyfriend, give it to your mom. Anybody else? Sort of like what you learned from doing it, like detox or something? Yeah.
I would learn it was like, wow, this is really good. I feel a lot more fulfilled and happy. And then the time would be up or whatever, and I'd slowly start to go back to
Yeah.
going on my phone, and then eventually I would just end up right back where I was, totally on my phone.
Yeah. So how do you guys, oh, go ahead.
I just say it feels like that there's more time in the day.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, yeah, we're spending a fourth of our day on our phones, and then you take that away. It's like, whoa, I just got 5 hours back. But I mean, I mean, that might be why you guys are here today, is the lasting change. And that's sort of what we're going to talk about. But I think it's cool that you guys are really already aware of this, and I think that COVID, if anything, has made us more attuned to how negative it can be, because everything went virtual. And I know everybody's tired of it. My husband's like, stop talking about COVID. I get it. But I mean, it's true, because especially you guys, I feel for you, because a lot of you guys were graduating high school and going into college and didn't have maybe the graduation parties that you'd hoped, or graduation, or, all things were different. Some people were even remote their first year of college. And so I just know that it's especially affected you guys in a way that it hasn't affected us, previously. And so I think it's great that you guys are becoming more aware. And honestly, too, I can say that the best way for us to bring about change is through being an example. And so I think it's great that you guys are here to be able to be that example. For me, it was Instagram. So I don't have a lot of, and we're going to talk about why, but I don't have a lot of social media apps. I have my one, guilty, which is Instagram. And I even leading up to this, I deleted it off my phone because I was like, okay, we got to refocus. But it will bring about anger, like you talked about, anxiety, sadness, loneliness, or depression. Because I want to be there, I want to be doing what they're doing, or I want to have the house that they have. All like the fixer-uppers today. I'm like, I gotta unfollow these people because they're all like transforming their house, and I'm running around with a toddler. But like, because you want what I think somebody mentioned it earlier, but the comparison, right? Comparison, whenever we compare, we can't connect. And that's why I think it's so important too. Like that comparison goes back to like envy and jealousy. And that's the crazy thing is that 7 out of 10 people say that they would get rid of social media if it wasn't for fear of missing out. Good old FOMO, right? Okay, so there was a speaker that we had at AGAP who actually wrote a book called JOMO. Like, hang with me. I know it sounds a little lame. But JOMO is like the joy of missing out. And I love the definition that she gave. It encourages us to embrace the pleasure of choosing what we want to do or don't want to do in a way that fulfills us, and encourages us to understand what we want, why we want it, and how we're feeling in the moment. Have any of you guys seen the documentary, The Minimalist? Some? No? Like one person? Okay, cool. Well, it's a great documentary, but they talk about that too. They talk about how all the stuff going on, instead just being fully present where we are while we're there. And I think it's so important too, because a lot of Jesus' ministry was interruptions. And so if we are so busy, so our schedules are so crammed that we don't even have the time to pause and talk to people and be available and be present because we're so distracted by whatever's online, then maybe we might not be able to minister in a way that Jesus is calling us to minister. So that's something that we used to have a session on, a whole thing on silence and solitude. Today we're just going to skim the top of it, but that's what we would talk about, how important it is to be available and be present, because most of Jesus' ministry was done in interruptions. So I encourage you guys to choose JOMO. So instead of having this fear of missing out, we embrace where we are and who we're with. So why do we get back on social media, right? Some of you guys haven't even done it. You've done the digital detox. Why do we go back? One word: dopamine. So dopamine is a chemical released as the brain anticipates rewards or when we achieve a goal. So this feel-good chemical drives us to continue engaging in enjoyable behaviors. So maybe it's the gratification, the instant gratification, right? We want to scroll through, see a new piece of information. It conditions our brain to want more. That's why notifications, like you talked about earlier, are so addictive, because it's something new and something unpredictable. And then something else that is like addictive, but when we post on social media, we don't know the result that we're going to get, right? And so what do? Maybe we used to do this, but we check, like my brother does this. Okay, so I'll just tell you guys, we have some time. My brother, he has Instagram, it's called like travel blog update or whatever, and he's a total wannabe influencer. And this poor guy, he spends so much, he's like traveling in a van and doing all the craziness. But he spends so much time, trying to do all these videos, because now the algorithm for influencers is you have to have so much content available. And then what does he do? He goes back and checks it. And then if it doesn't perform well, he deletes it and puts it back on. And so, this is literally the age that we live in. And what's crazy too, just a little fun fact, is that the TikTok so China, I think, is the one who created TikTok. And their TikTok over in China it's about education. It's about things that you're learning. It's about content that is valuable. And most of their, teens and young adults want to be like an astronaut or, these different things that are more like educationally driven. Whereas in America, they've literally programmed our TikTok where it's like a bunch of dances or, whatever it may be. And that the main thing that Gen Z wants to be is an influencer right now. Like, that's where we're at in America. And so it's just so crazy that, this content has just driven us, and we look at those influencers and we think, oh, they've got the life. Just to tell you guys, my parents have 5 acres. I'm telling a lot of fun stories today, but my parents have 5 acres, and we actually have influencers living like in the back of my parents in a school bus. So they're doing like the school bus thing, and she gets paid to like do these ads or whatever. But they literally have to record every second of their life. And it just, to me, it feels like it would take away from being fully present in the moment, where you are, and what you're doing. And so I think that's just important to know that what you see on Instagram, and I know we all know this, but isn't reality. A lot of work and a lot of time goes into that might not be worth it. So Catherine Price, the one who wrote the book How to Break Up with Your Phone, she says, our phones are packed with subtle positive reinforcements that trigger dopamine shots, which keep us coming back for more. Together, these reinforcements give us a pleasant feeling of control, which in turn make us want to be constantly on our phone. So, and like you talked about earlier, the product being sold is our attention, which is why they work so hard to make it addictive, because our attention is the most valuable thing we have, because we only experience and remember what we pay attention to. And what we pay attention to is making a broader decision of how we live our life. So I want to repeat that. What we pay attention to is making a broader decision of how we want to spend our lives. And I think somebody mentioned it earlier, but it affects your memory. And it's so true, because the more that we just have to go from thing to thing to thing, it shortens our memory, and it shortens our attention span, and our phones are damaging our capacity to concentrate and think creatively. It's so important. So all that to say that addiction can lead to anxiety. I think somebody mentioned it earlier. That was the way that affects them. It definitely affects me. And designers know that we crave affirmation. So the more ways there are for us to be judged, the more anxiety we'll have. So if you have all these different apps and all these different ways of quote unquote being judged, then the more anxiety that we have. And the desire for personal affirmation is perhaps the smartphone's strongest lure, which is amplified especially when we're feeling lonely or struggling. A lot of studies done on like phone addiction and anxiety and depression, sometimes people will negate them because they'll say, oh, no, it's the lonely people who are already lonely who use them. Or, it's the people who are already anxious using them or already depressed using these platforms. But to me, that just says, like, that should be even more of a red flag. Because if it's the people who are already struggling, who are going to it more, and then it's causing them to feel even worse, like, well, why aren't we there for them in that? And I think it just goes to show how negative it can be. So anyways, you guys get the point of that. And it creates unrealistic ideas of how others are living their life. So, and we already talked about it can become toxic when we start to compare. And here's the crazy thing. So I was talking to my husband the other day, and I was like, well, at least, this was a good thing. I thought like I was being a good, believer, and I was maybe wrestling with some discontentment, and I was like, you know what, I have it so much better off than so many people in the world, like America, we're like in the top richest country, all these things. And then my husband's like, well, we're not, you shouldn't compare yourself. I was like, no, this is a good comparison. This is like, okay, we're good because everybody else is struggling, and I'm grateful for what we have. And he's like, no, any comparison is bad. And it literally, that's what this quote says in this book. She talks about how any kind of comparison is linked to poorer well-being, whether you think you're better than somebody or worse than somebody. And so I think that's why it's so important too, to be careful that we don't compare, because when we compare, we can't connect with each other. So, and here's the crazy thing, guys, is that the number of adolescents reporting that they feel anxious or depressed has doubled in the past 30 years. And I think that this is a huge reason why. So, and then I know somebody, we're going to sort of shift to physical effects, said sleep. How many of you guys have trouble falling asleep at night? Okay. So like half the room, right? Okay. So, did you guys know, you probably do, but the blue light emitted from our devices, it suppresses the release of melatonin in our brain, and it keeps us from falling asleep. So this is called digital insomnia. So what do a lot of people do when they can't sleep? We scroll, right? Or we turn on the TV, or whatever it may be. But in a way, that's keeping us from sleep even more, because the blue light tells our brain, hey, it's day, wake up. And here's the important thing is that sleep. I know in college I probably got the least amount of sleep that I've ever gotten in my life. You're pulling a lot of all-nighters and stuff like that. But sleep is so important because it allows our neurons to rest and engage our supportive brain cells to clean out the toxins in our brain. So it's sort of like if we don't have 7 to 9 hours of sleep, all those toxins just build up. So it's like the analogy, I know it's not a pretty analogy, but of like having sewer in your brain, where if it's not like you don't get the sleep, it doesn't get cleaned out. It's like, that's sort of gross. But yeah, that's like what happens, and then all that builds up, and then we wonder why it's harder for us to function, because we're not getting the sleep that we need. So, a survey done with middle schoolers. So how many of you guys have Snapchat? Are you guys Snapchatters? Yeah. Okay, TikTok? Is that like the main thing now? No, a couple? Okay. Instagram? Okay. So Facebook? Is anybody still on Facebook? Okay. There you go. He's like, yes. Facebook. Okay. So there was a study done of middle schoolers, And they were asking their parents, like, what is the main thing that you wish your parents knew? And they said, I wish they knew how much anxiety and sleep deprivation that my phones bring us. So there's this author who wrote about it, and he went and visited his daughter's middle school classroom. And they said, okay, raise your hand if you have Snapchat. And all the hands went up. And then he said, okay, put your head down on your table, and raise your hand if you feel like Snapchat is a part-time job. And every hand went up because of the pressure that people feel. I mean, you guys won't believe this, but we had an AGAP experience, that's like the tech-free retreats we used to do. We had one back in October of 2019 or something like that, and somebody literally paid somebody else to maintain their Snapchat streaks, like while they were at AGAP. And so I'm like, okay, you're here to get a digital reprieve, but yet you're still like maintaining all of the stress that's what's causing it. So I'm not shaming anybody who like is maintaining their, Snapchat streaks. I just want you to maybe think the deeper question, like, is this worth it? Is it worth the stress that it brings? So another effect can be loneliness. I think somebody mentioned it back there. Because online we have these broader but shallower relationships. And the thing is that whenever we're passively scrolling through social media, it's actually more detrimental than if we're actively engaging and communicating with people. Dr. Graham Davy says it's the quality of your social interactions, not the quantity, that defines loneliness. And I used to sort of compare this to like if you have 100 pennies or you have 4 quarters. They're both equate to $1. But I think it's sometimes having those fewer, richer, deeper relationships that you could be real and authentic and accountable with, where there's so much more depth in a relationship. So you guys probably haven't heard of this analogy because it's been a while, but we basically used to, like, way back, live in tribes. So you would have like a tribe of, let's say, 200 to 300 people. So like if all these chairs were filled, that's our tribe, or that's like our little group or community or whatever it may be, where everyone was known, seen, and loved. So like everybody had a role, everybody had a job, everybody had a position where they felt like they were contributing to the community in a greater way, right? And so now, instead of comparing ourselves to maybe 200 people and still feeling like we have sort of some significance, we're comparing ourselves to millions, if not billions, of people online. And instead of feeling known, seen, and loved, instead we feel isolated and insignificant. So I think this is another reason why it's so important for us to be so intentional about the communities that we want to create. I know my husband and I was raised in Vero Beach, Florida, so it's like an hour and a half southeast of here. Not a long drive, but we went out to Phoenix, Arizona for a little bit to get a master's degree, and then we came back that's when I started up the nonprofit. And when we came back, ironically, this is the town I grew up in, so you would think like, oh, I have my friends. No friends. And so we were like, okay, we're just going to start a young adult hang. And so we did like a young adult game night. The goal was that we could have life-giving conversations, talking about Jesus and things like that. It turned into more just food and games, but that's fine. But like the thing is, we had to be intentional about it. Like even in my hometown that I was going back to, instead of just complaining about not having a community or not having friends or not having this, I think that's a role that I know my brother-in-law, their whole thing is like they'll complain about not getting a raise at work or a promotion or whatever it may be, but instead just take the initiative. Like, I mean, we're all adults here. If you feel like you need a community of people, or, hey, we should have a game night, let's make a game night. Hey, and we should do this, go do that. And just be intentional about facilitating the community that you want to have, rather than passively just waiting for somebody else to do it. I think it's so important, and I think you guys will look back and just be so glad that you did that. So, excuse me, I'm fighting a little bit of a recovery from a cold. But yeah, that goes back to say too that technology, another negative is that we rarely experience silence and solitude. Like I talked about, when we did these retreats, we would have a whole hour, I think it was an hour, might have been more, but of just total silence. And it killed some people. Like, I'm 100% extrovert, so it's pretty difficult for me. I remember my freshman year in college, have you guys taken the Myers-Briggs test? Okay, yeah. So I scored 100% on extrovert. And then my husband, they also say like opposites attract or whatever. We were literally both the same thing. So we were both like ENFPs or whatever. But all that to say that that hour of silence is so important because it's in this silence and the solitude that we can have deep thoughts and like process what we're experiencing. And the thing is, like, boredom cultivates creativity and original ideas and things like that. And technology instead, it isolates us in public. So how many of you guys have been, I don't know what transportation you guys use where you live, like if you use trains or whatever, but public transportation, and you get on and everybody has their headphones in, right? Or those of you who flew here, right? Like you got your headphones in. I'm the annoying person who'll be like, hi, take out your headphones, say hi to me. But that's the crazy thing is that these headphones, they isolate us in public, right? So even when we're out and about, it's supposed to be like talking to people and getting to know people and interacting, we're isolating ourselves. And then yet in private, when we could have that time to reflect and sort of take time for our own solitude, it distracts us. Because what do? We use it to be entertained. And so I think it's so important for us to take that time to stop and like have whatever it is, an hour, 10 minutes of solitude. There's actually, I think I'm jumping ahead, but he talks about how, I think it was Henry Nouwen who says that it's more important to have 10 minutes of silence and like silence and solitude a day rather than just an hour maybe here or there sporadically. So I know that's like the trend now is meditation and all these things, but the thing is like God invented that. That's why it's something that's so healthy for us is to take time to, instead of meditating on whatever else, use that time to meditate on scripture and think about how God is moving in your life. I love this definition. I'm sort of rabbit trailing, but how faith is our receptivity to God's activity. So I'll repeat that. Faith is our receptivity to God's activity. So just think about like if we're so consumed all throughout our day that we don't even have time to be receptive and be available, then it's going to be hard for us to see where the Holy Spirit's moving in our life. So anyways, all that being said, we're going to jump to, on the back of the handout, there's sort of like 10 different ways that we can sort of be more intentional about this. So have any of you guys ever set like a timer for something, like for you said you had the timer thing, right? Anybody else? Yeah? Okay. Has that helped you guys?
No.
Why hasn't it helped you?
Because I can't turn a timer on.
Can you turn it off? Okay.
If I have to want to not do it.
Yeah, you have to want to not do it. Yeah. Has it helped anybody else? Yeah? Okay. Because that's what I had. I was like, be intentional, have a timer. But if you're just going to ignore the timer, it probably won't help you very much. So I would say do what you did, which is like maybe even set a password and like have your mom be the bad person or whatever. Because, what is it? Yeah, don't let it be your significant other. That might cause some fights. But yeah, because again, it just goes back to we have to control it or else it's going to control us. I know there was a study from the University of Pennsylvania that found people who limited social media to 30 minutes a day or less actually felt significantly better with less like fear of missing out and less anxiety and stuff like that. So if you're going to use a timer, maybe like have somebody else help you with it. And then also too, this is create a better online experience. That's the number 2. This is so important because I think we need to take ownership of we are in control of like what content we consume. So do any of you guys follow people who like maybe make you feel anxious or angry or any negative feelings? No? You guys all follow great, wonderful people who are the best. Okay. Yeah. Okay. These people, yeah. No, that's great. No, but I think, okay, so maybe I'm not explaining myself very well. So if there's any accounts where maybe it's not even the person, but just the content is causing you to be like stressed, or like for me, the fixer-upper people, when I look at all their content, it's cool and it's not bad content, but then it makes me feel stressed because I'm like, I need to go fix up my whatever it is, So does that make sense? Like any content that makes you feel insignificant or anxious or envious, maybe even like exes, unfollow them. Or people who aren't nice to you, unfollow them. The thing is we control what we're consuming, so be intentional about that. And also too, like I think you guys, it's so important. I'm not saying like get off of all your devices, get off of your, if you need to, do it. But if we are going to be on, let's focus on creating content that is life-giving and enhancing to other people, rather than like that might raise up those same feelings of like insecurity or envy or jealousy. if that makes sense. So 3 is limit social media platforms. So this was, I think, a couple years ago, but for Lent, do any of you guys give up, have you guys ever like given up social media or phones? I mean, probably not phones for Lent, but like social media for Lent? Yeah, some of you guys? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I did this one year, and I think it's so cool. And actually, I think Ryan, the one who's sort of like facilitating, who I'm communicating with, he said he does this every single year as a reset. And I think it's so important because no matter how much you know about the topic, like you said, we know that it can be bad for us. We need that reset that sort of brings us back to ground zero. Because there's a great book called Digital Cocaine. I know it sounds pretty intense, but it talks about how basically all this dopamine that we get whenever we get a like we get a hit of dopamine, or whenever somebody engages, we get dopamine. The more dopamine that we get, the more that we need to get in order to feel that same sort of like excitement or relief or whatever it is. And so a lot of people, like there's even gamers who have to do like 6 weeks unplugged in order to reset their like dopamine levels, which I know sounds crazy. But if anything, I think that this would be like a good reset for you guys. So yeah, delete social media from your phones for a season. Because the more, and 2, maybe instead of having like 5 different social media platforms, maybe just have 1, because the more that we have, the more anxious that we feel, because we have to keep up with them all. And I think last night she talked about maybe this is the year of deeper surrender. And I just really want to challenge you guys, maybe this is something that God's calling you to surrender. Maybe it's not all of it, or maybe it's not forever, but maybe it's just a few for a time. And encourage you guys, really, whatever God was calling you to, whenever you heard her say, maybe this is the year of deeper surrender, what is God calling you to surrender? So, less screens before bed. You guys heard it, like having you raise your hands for screens affecting you before sleep. So a really cool thing is to like put your phone on airplane mode, or do not disturb after 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever it is, because then you're not looking at your phone. And another great thing, how many of you guys have alarm clocks? Okay, you guys have like physical alarm clocks not on your phone? Okay, I'm impressed. Most of the time it's like nobody. So use them, okay? You have them, let's use them. So we did this after we started AGAP, and it was just such a relief, like, okay, just gonna hit the snooze button or whatever it may be, instead of grabbing your phone to turn off the alarm, and then you end up scrolling, and you've already consumed all this negative content before you even got out of bed. So yeah, you'll have better, and I say no screens an hour before bed. You'll have better quality sleep and quantity. And then 5 is turn off notifications. I think somebody else mentioned it earlier, but whenever we have notifications on an app, you're 3 times more likely to use that app. So, again, your time is their money. So, and the crazy thing too, guys, even like when we're not on our phones physically, even when our phones are present, we're less available. There's a statistic that like 80%, intimacy decreases in a conversation by 80% when the phone is present on the table, 60% when it's turned upside down, 40% when it's in the bag, and still 20% when it's off in the bag. So I encourage you guys, like, as you're facilitating these deep relationships and these friendships that you're being intentional about, put the phone away. I mean, it was crazy. There was one time, and this is number 8, I'm jumping ahead to stop fubbing, but I had a girl over, and she literally, like, we're in the middle of a conversation, she grabs her phone, it rings, and answers it, and just walks away, like, with no explanation. I was like, okay, bye. So please don't do that. I hope you guys haven't done that. But it just makes us feel, worthless. Like, whenever people pull out their phone in front of us, or when we're having a conversation, it devalues the person that you're talking to. So definitely would stop doing that. So, and Cal Newport writes in his book, this is a great book if you guys want to dive deeper, is Digital Minimalism. Yeah, have you guys read it? Yeah, okay, awesome. Okay, you guys are like already on it. So he talks about face-to-face conversation is the most human and humanizing thing we do. Fully present to one another, we experience the joy of being heard and being understood. So, and the number 7 is embrace silence and solitude. There's a respected psychologist who says that the capacity, this is so important, because if we don't create this time of silence and solitude, then we aren't opening ourselves up to be able to have the empathy to respond to people. And that's what she says. The capacity for empathetic conversation goes hand in hand with the capacity for solitude. In solitude, we find ourselves and prepare ourselves to come to conversation with something that's authentic. And then there's a little bit, she goes on to say, to sit in silence restores the soul. Yeah, and just then we can start responding to life rather than just reacting to it. And then, yeah. Number 9, practice digital minimalism, like you guys said. I love this definition because it's not saying we hate it or whatever, but it's saying a philosophy of tech use where you focus your online time on a small number of carefully selected and optimized activities that strongly support the things that you value and happily miss out on the rest. So I really want you guys, if you guys have, all you should hopefully have a handout and a pen, but maybe like write down which of these that you want to do, or what is one tangible step that you want to take. Because the reality is if you don't like decide right now, here's what I'm going to do, and then the second thing is like have an accountability person, find somebody who's going to help you do it, or maybe that you can be accountable to in that process, who can help you do it. Then that's something that I would write down now and respond, like act on it immediately. Because if we don't do it immediately, most of the time we won't even end up doing it. So, anyways, that's sort of just what I'm sharing. But we do have some time for Q&A. If you guys have any questions, I'm not saying I know all the answers, and you might stump me. I hope you do, but I would just love to answer anything. Yeah. Fubbing. So phone snubbing. Yeah, sorry. I had that in here. But yeah, it basically means where you tell, like where you're on your phone in front of a person. So phone snubbing. So, anything else? Anyone? Yeah?
So I've heard a friend suggest this, and I was curious if you had any thoughts on it. The idea of like the color on our phone. So it's like suggesting like to just use black and white.
Yeah, I did that for a while. Yeah, it actually works. It worked for me. So something that he's talking about, and this is I didn't want to bore you guys with all like do this, but is to turn your phone to black and white because it actually makes it less appealing. And I had that for a significant amount of time, and then I couldn't remember how to turn it back, so I just left it. But it's so true, because then you get on your phone and it's not as like alluring. So that's another great step too. Yeah, turn your phone black and white.
What is the definition of like, not the definition, but what are characteristics of someone having like a phone addiction?
That's a great question. Are you referring to like somebody else?
Just like in general, like maybe for myself, also for like friends, family, kind of thing. Like how do I know if it's just like you really like being on your phone versus like a phone addiction? What's the question?
She said, like, how do you know if it's a phone addiction? Which I think is a great question. I've never heard that before. But I think regardless of if it's labeled as like I'm addicted to my phone or I just like to be on my phone a lot, I think it's important for us all to be aware of how much time we are on our phone. So maybe like somebody addicted to their phone would be somebody who's on it like 10 hours a day. And actually like for Gen Z, which I think is most of the people in here, that could be the average time. It's like 8 to 10 hours a day that Gen Z can be on their phones. And so I think first off is just being aware of it. And then if it's in regard to somebody else, the reality is like my brother, I told you guys, he's on his phone all the time. Like we just had Thanksgiving and he's literally like creating a video while we're having our Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm like, can you just put it away for 5 seconds? And the thing is, he's been to like 5 of these tech-free retreats. So a lot of times, like, it doesn't matter how much you know, it has to be like a realization of I want to be present and fully available to the people around me, and then surrounding yourself with people who are going to keep you accountable. I think that's the best way I can answer that. Does anybody else? I mean, you guys have all read digital minimalism and stuff like that. Anything else you would say to that? It's okay. So does that, yeah.
I would just offer, like, so much of this is actually seeing where are my attachments and, like, desiring greater freedom. I think you're highlighting, like, well, it's not that I just want to be off my phone for the sake of being off my phone, but everything that I say yes to, I'm saying no to other things. And everything I say no to enables me to say yes to other things. So I think that's kind of the heart is, like, what am I attached to? What do I keep coming back to that's not holy? Because I only want to be attached to Jesus.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think too is remembering your why. You know, like why are you guys even in this room?
Yes.
There you go.
I scheduled like different things in the next semester, and I did a recharge period.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can do screen or not screen, and I said, here's why.
Yes. I think it's so important for anything that we do. Like, we have to know why we're doing it. So maybe too, if you're struggling like you feel like you have a phone addiction, maybe just every morning write down, here's why I don't want to be on my phone. Because I want to be present to other people, or because I want to be available to where the Holy Spirit's leading me, or whatever it may be, because you have to have a bigger why of why you don't want to do it than why you want to do it, than the convenience or the comfort of doing it in order to get you off it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
I actually kind of have a kind of question slash comment, I guess. So I actually was talking to my mom about this because we were comparing her college time to my college time, and we actually have the same major. Like, we're studying the same thing, and she was telling me like, your experience is so drastically different to mine because we live in such a digitized world. Like, I'm 21 years old, in my third year of college, and I have been relying on devices for my academics since I was a freshman in high school. Because at my high school, we all had to have an iPad. All of our work was done on an iPad, and now I'm in college, and all my textbooks are digital, all my assignments are digital. Like, I turn everything in an iPad. So like, my question is like, we're given all these tools to get rid of the anxiety that that technology is creating for us. But we're all in college, not seeing devices for the hour before bed. That's kind of not feasible for a lot of us. Like, we're like till 11:59 finishing that essay and turning it in, and there's like, oh, I finally can go to bed. So like, what's your suggestion for like, especially students today? Like, we are seeing blue light till 2 or 3 in the morning because we have to. So like, what is your suggestion for students like us that kind of don't have the option sometimes?
That's a great question. So she said, with you guys being in college today, it's like we're on our screens all the time and like, submitting papers. I get it. Waiting till midnight to submit it, everything. I would say blue light blocking glasses. There's these things called like blue light blocking glasses. And then also sort of like on your phone, how you can make it black and white. On your computer, I forget what it's called. I think it's called Luminate. But you can have something that like turns off the blue light on your computer. So that's what I have. Yeah, and you can do it on your phone too. So I actually have that on my computer, and the cool part is it goes with the sunset. So like it'll gradually get like more and more orange, and then eventually like at 9 o'clock it's totally orange. And there's times where like I'll be doing Zoom calls, and I'm like, why do I look like a minion or something? And so it's because of the orange setting. So that's a great way, like if you have to be on it. So yeah, what were you saying?
I would say along those lines, something I realized maybe like undergraduate college. I was in college a while ago, and I entered college thinking all I need is an iPad, and then within 1 month I was like, I have to buy a MacBook. Like, I can't be typing on this small tiny device, trying to send papers and all this kind of stuff. So I gave into I'm going to increase my technology use by having more devices. But yeah, even having graduated graduate school last year, one of the things I was really grateful for was college professors really sticking into me and saying, you procrastinate like too much. And this is not me passing judgment on someone, but this is my own reflection on myself. Whereas instead of me getting anxious or depressed or doing any kind of thing because I'm waiting till the 11th hour to click that send button because I want to get the most grades, he really taught me how to have better habits of like, I gave you this assignment 30 days ago, which means you can do an hour a day and then just put the phone away.
Yeah.
Right. So it made me aware of how to manage my own personal life, where I was able to say, okay, like I'm gonna write this assignment for this amount of time, and then I'm gonna move on and have a social life.
Yeah.
Because if I'm just stuck at that screen till 11:59, then it's just gonna suck the life out of me.
It's so true. And we used to go a little bit more in depth too, like when you said habits. It all comes back to our habits. And basically the habits that you put in place are either going to make you feel more successful and like you're accomplishing what you want to, or they're going to be passive habits that you're not intentional about that might lead to those, delays. So yeah, I agree.
What would your opinion be on like completely deleting social media versus keeping it to just, I guess like my question is, when does it become too much of a problem where you need to delete it? And when is it you should face the battle and try and like work through that rather than completely eliminate it?
I would say that the best way to start is just take it off your phone. take it off your phone, and then if you need to, access it, or like if you want to stay, I mean, you guys are in college, so if you want to stay connected, with people who are back home or your family or whatever it may be, then maybe just access it on a computer. And I think that's the best way to have a relationship with it, because then we're not just like 5 seconds in a line, we're going to go to social media or this, or we're going to go to Instagram, whatever it may be. And then, I mean, if you feel great, I have friends who deleted it, put it back, deleted it, put it back, and it's sort of like an ongoing joke now. I'm like, oh, she deleted it again. But it's whatever is life giving for you. And I know that might sound like selfish, but in regard to something that's social media, which is not an essential thing in our life, if it's hurting you, get rid of it. If it's helpful, then use it as a tool. That's something that's so important. If you guys walk away with one thing, use social media as a tool, because then you can look at it more objectively as a relationship, like people who work online. So sorry, I know I'm going on. Does that help sort of about like looking at it as a tool? Yeah, and then maybe just deleting it for a season and then come back to it, if you need to.
What do you think about the potential for a Christian social media that actually aids in helping us develop this digital minimalism and living out our faith?
Like being an example on social media platforms?
No, like a whole social media platform that is Christian. That Christians use.
Oh, you mean like totally different?
Yeah.
I don't, go for it.
Have you seen Upward or anything like the dating apps, but they're for like religious people, and then like
but like an Instagram, but it's like Christian.
Christian. There you go. All right. Let me know when you make it. No, I think that'd be cool. But I mean, something too that we can use our platforms for on social media is to be a light, and maybe interact with people who aren't believers that we wouldn't see on a day-to-day basis, and show them the light of the Lord and stuff like that. So I know you guys. Yeah.
Back to kind of the college assignment thing, and this might not apply to everyone, but assignment is something that I found very helpful is printing out assignments and doing as much of my work and interfacing with the assignments on paper and by hand. Because of the computer screen or phone screen, you do your assignment, they just change to something else. And you're distracted and you're wasting 20 minutes not looking at the assignment where that piece of paper right there. You can't turn anything else.
There's a great book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and then also Atomic Habits is a great book to talk about like different habits and habit stacking and things like that, like you're talking about. But the crazy thing is every time we get distracted, like say you're working on a paper and then you get distracted and look at Instagram or whatever it may be, it takes us like 10 to 20 minutes to get back in the zone. So instead, like I would encourage you guys, eliminate all distractions, focus, like get it done, take intervals if you need to. Everything you can print off, I totally would print off. I was the old school girl. We had physical, textbooks. But even like when I read books, like I need the physical thing. I can't do tablets. But yeah, that's a great way. Just when you can, do that. And two, some way you can like be on your computer but not get distracted is just I have a little timer thing, and it's like your focus time, And so it's like, okay, I'm going to work on this paper for this long, and then reward yourself or whatever. Eat a Twinkie. I don't know. Anyone else? Yeah.
Question about balance between time and work. How could we reach the right thing? Because now we have always the same computer, the same goals for the kind of work and the kind of social media for our family or things nice.
Yeah.
So finally, when it's free time, we answer emails of work, and it could be easier to say now it's time of work, now it's time of free time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so what should we do?
Yeah, I would say that that's so important. I have a lot of people who have their work on their phones, on the same phone. If you can't have two different phones, like one for work, one for personal, that's ideal. And then just turn off the work one, and turn off the, reverse it. But I know a lot of people can't do that. So I would just treat it like that maybe. I mean, if you have to go as far as deleting your email when you go on vacation, to do that, to be fully present with your family, then maybe you could try doing that. I know there's different little hacks too, just like setting, timers for different things. Or some people like say that they can't use their social media during the workday. That way you don't, end up on it. But yeah, I think as far as the email sort of thing, or even like moving it to a different page. Like, how you guys have little pages on your phones? You can just like have all your social media or distractions. There's Catherine Price from How to Break Up With Your Phone. She breaks down the apps in like 3 different levels One is like, okay, these are productive apps like maps or podcasts or whatever. These are sort of, in the middle, and then these are like the dangerous apps. And so she literally would put them that way on her phone. So like the productive apps would be on the first, and then you have to slide to get to the second, and then you have to slide all the way to get to the third. So maybe that would be a good way of breaking it up. Like these are my personal, apps that I use, and then these are my work apps that I use, and then only, being on there. I don't know if that helps at all. Does that help a little bit?
But it doesn't have so much because sometimes it's the same. Just even if it's nothing with the app, but just the text is always the same.
Yeah. With texting?
Texting or just WhatsApp, the same for me, for my family and for the community and things that.
Yeah. So for texting, maybe if you get a work text when you're not working, you guys, I don't know if you know this, but you can pin a text. So you can, if you hold on to the text, it can pin it to the top. So then that way you can like just pin work text to the top and leave them unread. And then that way, like when you're going to go back to it at 9 a.m. tomorrow, it's right there. So that's something that I do for work. I pin them. That way I don't forget about them, but then I don't have to answer them. Yeah, and you can mute conversations too. Like maybe during the day, I have to mute my family text because it's like bing, 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 bing. So, muting them during the day, that might help a little bit. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I just have a question kind of back to like the content part of it all.
Yeah.
And just like, so we're Christians here for a conference. Yeah. And like, if we think we have like a relationship with social media, I'm curious just like what your perspective would be on just like engaging with social media and like just like sharing content and like if we're primarily creating content like and that's where people are at like is there a call to be on social media or is it better to like be a witness and not being on social media and like just kind of a balance between the two?
I definitely think that you can be a witness on social media. And I think that's what I refer to. I just skimmed over it really fast. But creating content is 10 times better than consuming content. Because then at least you're being intentional in what you share and how you share it and what you're sort of projecting to the world. And then another thing too, I just thought about it, but I forgot. Mom brain. But yeah, I totally think that you can be a light and be an encouragement. Oh, it's actively engaging. Like when we are, if we choose to be on social media, is whenever we engage with people, it actually is better for us because we are trying to facilitate relationships and encourage people and, be a light rather than just passively scrolling. So yeah, I mean, there's some great, influencers online who are a light and who are an encouragement. And I know I've talked to some of the leaders at SPO about that because they're trying to do that. They're trying to be, a positive influence on social media. So I definitely think that you can do it. Does that help answer it? Was there anything?
Yeah, I think I was curious too, like, there is so much Christian content.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do it in a way that isn't just like more noise?
That's a good question. She said there's so much Christian content, how do you do it in a way that's not more noise? I think maybe just seriously ask like if you are called to do that. Because you're right, there is so much online. And my husband actually started a digital marketing agency, so I have like the irony of helping with social media posts, for work, and then being offline it on myself. But I think the more that you treat it like a business, like a work, and it's a tool, and it's a tool to be able to reach people or whatever it may be, you're less emotionally attached to it than if it's, this is my identity. And if you don't like a picture, you don't like me, or if you like a picture, you like me. Whereas I'm posting this about content, you can like it or not, whatever. So it sort of like makes it a little bit less personal. But like for my husband too, I was like, Caleb, there's tons of marketing agencies, why are you gonna do that? And he said, Bethany, it doesn't matter how many there are, I will still reach different people. So, maybe you are called to do that in a way where you will reach different people. There might be not a bajillion, but a lot of Christian social media influencers, but maybe you're called to reach a different set of people. That's something that I think our ministers told us a while back, is that we are going to reach people that they can never reach. And that's so true. As everybody who shares on stage, they're speaking and sharing with you in a way because you can reach people who they will never touch. And I think it's so important for us to take it seriously and realize, like, am I being a light into the world? And when people look at me, do they see Jesus? And I think that would be a step one. bullying is so prevalent online because we're not in front of the person, so we don't see their emotional response. I think it's increased like 40%, and then whenever people are bullied online, they're 60% more likely to bully other people, and it's developed this lack of empathy because we don't care. You can't respond, you can't cry in front of us, whatever it may be. But yeah, I hope that helps a little bit,
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? I know we have like 5 minutes left. So yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, there's an app called Pocket Points that you basically set a timer for yourself, and you have to stay off your phone for that many minutes, like say it's 20 or 30 minutes. And then if you successfully keep your phone off, then you build up points, then you can cash them into like gift cards and stuff like that. So it gives you an incentive to not be on your phone. So I don't know.
There you go, Pocket Points. If you want to get paid for getting off your phone, I wish I knew that. That must be a new app. So there's another app that I know of. It's like when you're off your phone, it plants a tree or something. But I think you had to pay for the app, so I didn't do it. But so Pocket Points, there you go. I thought of something else that we said though. Anybody else have any other? Yeah.
How concerned are you with the rise of like VR and like the metaverse?
Oh man. Okay, I don't have time for this. I think it's time to go. Okay. I'm concerned because I think we lose our human empathy, and our humanness is so important. I know my husband too. He just showed me the website that I don't want to tell you guys because you'll use it to write out your papers, but that you can go to, and then like all AI types it all up. I just think, I think it might be detrimental to relationships, and that's why I feel like we have to be even more intentional, to facilitate deep connection offline. So, yeah, sorry, they had something back there, and then I'll come back. Did you want you guys have some? Raise your hands? No.
Well, I was just scratching.
Okay, you're good. Okay.
Okay, my question is, so obviously like mission SPO, we're building relationships and meeting up with people where, and these people could, like, even as missionaries and students, and I like obviously we're meeting with people who might be our age or like many years younger, and like as the generations kind of like change, like the younger generations seem to be like on their phone a lot, or just like more like have more tendencies of like being addicted to those things. How would you like recommend we go about like pursuing these relationships if like this person or people are like
Not engaged.
all the time?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I thought you were going to go the way of like, how do we tell them to get off their phones? Which, if it is that, be the example, because it's going to be really awkward when you're staring them down and they're phubbing you, phone snubbing. But then also, too, I think you have to, I've experienced that, where you try to overexert yourself to be in a, friendship with somebody, and they could care less. So I think you need to be intentional about who you are investing your time in, and make sure that it is reciprocated. Because or else you just feel like a doormat. Does that help at all about finding people who will reciprocate it? Go ahead.
More of a statement going back to like the work and just like free time separation kind
Yeah.
of. Forget who I was listening to, but he's like a business talker, and he was saying how like you just have to live in the moment, and how he would always go to the beach with his family, and he'd be thinking, oh, I didn't do this for work, I didn't do that for work.
Yeah.
And then when he was at work, he'd be like, oh, I should bring my family to the beach.
Yeah.
And just like everything got mixed up. But like when you live in the moment, like when you go to work, just think about work, don't think about anything else. And when you go to the beach with your family or doing things with friends, don't be thinking about work. Otherwise, everything just gets eased out.
Yeah, and I mean, if you do, like, sometimes you can't help it, just have, like, a little note, like, okay, gotta get back to that, or just write it down. Like, whenever I'm having quiet time, of course, all the things will come to mind of what I have to get done. And I just literally write it down. It's called, like, a brain dump. Just brain dump it, write it all down, so that you don't have to think, like, I have to remember this, I have to remember this. You already wrote it down, and you can focus, on your quiet time. And then one last story I want to share with you guys. The Minimalist, the sort of documentary I talked about earlier, he has sort of this thing, which might help too with, whether you delete it, or I think in the back when you asked, if we delete it or not. But he talks about if anything that is a want becomes a need, they get rid of it for a season of their life. So, I mean, the example that they used was coffee, which my husband would say, I'm addicted. This morning I texted them, I'm like, is there coffee? I need coffee. But, if anything that is like coffee, we don't have to have coffee to survive. You see all the time, people are fine, they don't need it. My husband can live without it. But it becomes a need, then they eliminate it for a season of their life so that it doesn't, it goes from being a need back to being a want. And so I would say that might be a relationship with, social media for a lot of us. We feel like it's a need. We feel like I can't get rid of it. I don't know what I would do without it. This is something I need in my life. Maybe just do a reset. And on the back of your handout, you guys will see some fun little ways to do a digital reset, turning off your phones. There's they do something similar as we were doing. It's called brick mode, but it's where you turn your phone into a brick. And so you can go on to do not disturb in the settings. And I don't know if you guys have done this, but whenever I'm driving, I have it on do not disturb. So it's like, hey, I'm driving. It's an automatic response. It just says, hey, I'm driving. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But you can do that when you go into this sort of brick mode. Just have it do not respond. I'm not responding right now. Automatic response, so that if you feel anxious about oh, somebody texted me, I need to text them back. No, they know. Hey, I'm unplugging for the day. I'll text you back whenever I get back online. So turning off your phone, I think is so important. Don't do it alone. Set up a wait email if you do have to do that for work, and then a dumb watch. I know some of us have the iWatches. My aunt hates those things because it's you'll be in the middle of a conversation and then somebody just looks down, which I get the practicality of it. But maybe just unplug it for a little bit. Having a game plan and a journal, do art, get sleep, all the things. But the thing is, the last one there says put it on your calendar. If you guys don't put it on your calendar, then it's not going to happen. So that's something that I would encourage you guys to do, even maybe before you leave this room, is figure out what you're going to change, who you're going to tell, and when you're going to do it. So hopefully that helps. And if you guys have any questions, I'll just be hanging out up here. Was there anything else?
Yes, I just have one.
Okay.